Hello, everyone. I'll just get you to introduce yourself, firstly, to our audience and the work that you presented, and we'll just have a little bit of a chat about it.
Okay, yeah. Uh, I'm Jörg Aurich. I'm primarily based in Vienna, in Austria, at the veterinary school, and my main topic there is animal reproduction. But the second thing we are doing is animal welfare and adaptation of horses to human challenges. So we have done quite a bit of research on horse transport. And also, we have been looked at riding and initial training of young horses. In this project, I'm a co-worker. There are other people besides me, and actually, the project leader of this big project is my wife, Christine Aurich. But I went to the ISES conference, so I will give this interview now. Yeah, and we are not talking about horse reproduction now, but about the training of young horses. And the question of for the topic of our current project is the maturity of young horses. When is a young horse ready to go into training for equestrian sports and for horse racing? And we are not that much looking at physical development. We are looking a little bit at this growth of the horse's muscular development, bone development. But the main topic is, you may call it the mental maturity of a young horse to enter pre-training and then enter training and take part in competitions. This is,
Yeah.
no, go
Yeah, no,
ahead.
it's great. It's great. I love hearing it. Sorry.
Uh, and this is primarily an animal welfare question. And there are more and more questions regarding the training of very young horses. Horses at an age below 3 years. And that is discussed in several countries. It's discussed in Germany, but also in the Scandinavian countries, as much as I know. And with regard to thoroughbred racehorses, probably it's a worldwide discussion. The training of yearlings or 1.5-year-old horses that then go to race as 2-year-olds. And yes, the German government, the Federal Ministry for Agriculture, um, decided or they discussed it and they said there is a need for research. We cannot decide on this question. And they issued a tender for a research project. And I said, we, which is a consortium of 5 institutions, we got this project. Yeah, and we look at how do young horses behave during their initial training, and how can we make it easy for these horses to adapt and to undergo this training without problems.
Well, it sounds like a massive topic, a very, very big topic. And it is even, I mean, in most countries that I've been to, anyone that's spoken about racing, even the public that I've found, just anecdotally, um, concerned and also has questions and issues regarding the age of these young horses. So it is a really, really big topic. So this is very exciting for me personally as well. I worked in racing and it was, yeah, it's really nice to be able to hear that more work is coming out of this. Um, so just to solidify kind of my understanding, your research looked at specifically training of young horses, not just from perspective of industry practice, but also from a kind of a scientific assessment of mental and physical maturity. So I'd love to be able to kind of unpack both the cultural side and also the physiological data that you've gathered. So from your interviews with the warm blood stallion and the thoroughbred trainers. It sounds like their approaches to initial training and their reasons for it vary quite a bit. Um, could you possibly talk about those differences and maybe what surprised you about that?
Yeah, I mean, these interviews that Franziska Pilger from our group conducted with trainers, that is more a supplement to the bigger experimental study. That was to learn about practices in the warmblood and thoroughbred industry, not only thoroughbred, but also standard-bred trotters, to learn about the practice in the industry and to learn about the reasons and the perceptions of the trainers. So we did qualitative interviews that are not just yes or no, or like it or not like it, but asking the trainers for the reasons behind their practices and what do they know, what do they believe. And it was mostly done during a visit to the training stables. So that it was not just an interview, but it was also some check for plausibility. If the training stables really allowed to give horses the good life that the trainers say my horses have.
Wow.
Or
Well, that's
if the trainer says, okay, all my horses have outdoor paddock access every day, and then you walk around the premises, you can make sure that there are enough paddocks to fulfill this demand, or if they are not.
And I feel like in a lot of studies, that is that extra step that's lacking is definitely seeing that they do have
Yeah,
these
yeah.
facilities and saying what they actually are practicing. So it's nice to have that kind of confirmation there. And you found one thing I noticed, you found that both groups tended to prioritize gradual increases in workload rather than simply raising the starting age for training. Was that a common kind of thing?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
with the starting age for training, that is part of the experimental study. And we did a project in warmblood stallions. Germany is probably more a warmblood equestrian country than a horse racing country. And a critical question was the preparation of stallions for licensing by the breed registry. So they're not ridden for licensing, but they are shown at hands, they are lunched, they have to do some free jumping without the rider. Quite high obstacles to see the talent of the stallions, and these stallions are prepared for a time period 2 to 3 months for this licensing event. And the German regulations say horses should not take part in competitions before they are 30 years old. There are currently exceptions for racehorses, but not for warmbloods. So what we did is at our partner institutions, which is a Brandenburg State Stud, which is a big state stud relatively close to Berlin, where Christine, my wife, has a field station that is run by the stud and Vienna Veterinary School. And we had 40 stallions that underwent this pre-training for licensing, and they were 18, 24, and 30 months old. And what do we look at? You will probably ask this. The stress response from an endocrine point of view. So we take saliva samples to analyze cortisol as a major stress hormone. We do continuous heart rate recordings. Then we have video recordings of the horses in the stable and during training so that we can have a look at behavior. And then, of course, we look at general health, days lost for training, lesions, injuries. And and then we have a second question, and that is, can we help these young stallions to meet the requirements or to adapt to training? Can we help them by putting them in a group stable? So not housing them in traditional individual boxes, but keeping them in a group. So we had different age groups, and within each age group, we had group housed and single stabled horses. Yeah, and from the Warmbloods, we have the results already, and that has just recently been published. And the result, well, this can be summarized in a way: the horses adapt and habituate relatively easy to these demands of pre-training or preparation for licensing, even the youngest ones, even the 18-month-old stallions. And group housing, in contrast to what we expected, did not really help the stallions, but the group house stallions were more stressed than those in individual boxes. So yes, the conclusion could be it's not that much of a problem to start pre-training early with a horse, but you have to do it in a diligent and correct and careful way. So you can do it, but it has to be done carefully. And it has to be adapted to the individual horse.
Yeah, I think that's key as well. I think when it comes to group housing as well, I mean, I understand when I work with horses and when we're considering the dynamics between each individual horse,
Yeah.
trying to select and group horses based on temperament, personality, and dynamics in that way, which can become quite complicated. Is that something you looked into? I mean, we don't really have an objective assessment to look at temperament and personality or anything. But instead of just saying, oh, we're just going to put these group one together, group two, group three, instead of that, did you consider these kind of dynamics or?
Well, we looked at the behavior, we looked at interactions among horses in the group. That is tedious work to look at these video recordings.
Yes.
We have one partner institution in our research consortium. They try to automate this, to put data loggers on the horses that with some artificial intelligence algorithms can evaluate do the horses walk, do they eat, are they active, are they not that active? But the interactions among horses, that is still something that has to be analyzed visually.
Well, I mean, even in data that's being looked at in particular behaviors is still being developed, let alone a whole kind of dynamic like ethogram of positive social
Eh,
interactions. It's
eh,
only just been really looked into. So it is difficult, and to be able to say, oh, this is a situation where positive welfare is being noticed rather than just the absence of negative welfare. So it is a really complicated thing, I understand. Not necessarily complicated, but we just don't have the data to be able to support some of those things. So you said uh, about group housing didn't seem to reduce distress as such compared to individual, which, as you said, might surprise some people. How should we interpret that finding? What should we do with that information?
well, group housing is something that requires, and our study confirms this. Other people have suggested this before. We do not claim that we are the first ones to find this.
No.
Group housing benefits from a stable hierarchy, from an established structure in a group of horses. And when you do this pre-training of stallions, they usually come in from different institutions, from different owners. And it takes 2 to 3 months until really a good hierarchy is established in a new group of horses. And there's some research, if you remove from a group, let's say you have 10 horses, and every week 2 horses are removed and 2 new horses are entered, you never get a stable group. There's always unrest. So we do not want to say that group housing should be seen more critical. But if you bring new horses together, you have to see that this is a problem. It is, while we were looking at stallions, it is definitely possible to keep 2.5-year or 3-year-old stallions in a group.
Hmm.
It's not that they are fighting all the time. They can be kept in groups, yes. But it was just not an advantage when they are in a training stable for, let's say, 2 or 3 months. If you know you will have these horses in a group for a year or so, then it's probably worth to bring them together, and then after 2 or 3 months, you have a good group structure.
Mm.
We will see. We look just at stallions. Our experience just with research animals that we keep in groups, research animals for non-equitation science projects, it appears to be easier to bring a group of stallions together than to form a stable group of mares.
Mm. Hmm.
So like in the stallions, it takes 3 months, 4 months. In the mares, it sometimes takes a year.
Mm. Yeah. Would you say that that can reflect species typical living as well? Because we find bachelor bands in the wild versus seeing just a group of mares with no stallions and no foals, for example. That was more of a comment rather than a question.
We try to copy this, yes,
Yeah.
and well, yes, in general it works.
Yeah,
And you have the occasional stallion that you have to take out of the group, maybe 1 in 10.
sure.
That always disturbs the structure in the group, and if you remove this, there is this occasional stallion,
Mm,
but that doesn't question the group housing in total.
mhm,
But it takes time, and if you have these valuable stallions coming from different locations, going through a pre-training program, and then going back to their or being sold for breeding after 2 or 3 months, it's no advantage to put them in a group.
mm, yeah.
And that will also be the problem in racing yards,
Hmm.
where well, all horses are kept individually,
Hmm.
with very few exceptions.
Hmm.
If you have these valuable horses, they go to a training yard, to a training stable for a couple of months. And
Hmm.
there's always movement and in change of horses in these training yards. So you would never get a really stable group.
Yeah. And just for our audience as well, with these the way that these stallions were managed, how could we see kind of was it meal-based feeding? Did they have turnout? What was
If,
the kind of day to
if
day?
Yes, we think they were kept in a good way.
Mm,
They had contact to neighbors in their, even those kept in single boxes. So they had always two neighbors with these typical bars, but no solid walls between the individual boxes.
mm,
And they use this contact. They, let's say, they talk to their neighbors. They sniff. Of course, these bars restrict social interaction among horses, but there are some ideas to give them like sort of a window between boxes.
mm,
Um, that was tested by people in Switzerland, and they call it the social box or the social compartment. So there is a bigger window between two stallions, so they can do mutual grooming. They can put their heads through and interact with the neighboring stallion, but they can also remove their head, and when they are eating, they are not fighting, so they can have some rest.
definitely.
Yeah, and traditionally, and that is what we did, we kept all our horses on straw.
Okay.
So they were able. to just nibbling around, eating some straw all the time. And this is also not a new study. There's some by now rather old studies from Paul McCreevy when he
Yeah.
was in the UK in the 1990s, and he looked at stereotypies in racehorses, and those kept on straw. They had a much reduced incidence of stereotypies compared to those kept on these typical wood shaving bedding in racing stables, or today they keep them on newspaper, shredded newspaper sometimes. And
And
they don't have a chance to eat straw.
yeah.
Again, there may be the individual horse that eats too much straw, that's eating straw all the time. And then it's prone to colic. And this horse, you may have to put on wood shavings, but we would say 9 out of 10 horses can go on straw. And yeah, all our stallions had paddock access for 3 to 4 hours a day.
Mm, yeah.
And paddock means in our institution at the state stud, these paddocks of a size like 40 by 40 meters. So it really with a sand ground. So it's not a pasture, but it's a huge paddock where the horses can move and can gallop and can do some bucking.
Sure.
So
And
these were our recommendations. If we say, okay, we keep them on straw, they have daily access to an outdoor paddock, and it's um, a limited time for this pre-training program. It was 12 weeks.
mm,
Then it is okay to keep them in individual boxes. And during these 12 weeks, you have to increase the demands really step by step. And then the horses are able to cope with this.
mm, yeah. That's really interesting. There's been quite a few more studies, as you mentioned, with the straw, that increases exploratory behavior, reduces the incidences of stereotypies. There's been a
Yeah,
lot of increases movement in the stable as well. Not talking repetitive like box walking, but just moving around the stable, not standing in one spot. So yeah, that is really interesting to look into. I'm really excited about all this research. It's really something I'm interested in. So it's really, really cool hearing it so far.
yeah. So as I said, by now the conclusion is it may not be a problem to start horses that early. Let's say when they are yeah as 2 year olds, but you have to do it in the right way. So you have to meet all their needs and well, give them a good life,
Mm,
give
yeah,
them neighbors, give them friends, and give them paddock access.
mm, definitely. And would you say, when it comes to these young horses, um, what would you suggest to, so if policy makers were to set kind of a minimum training age, what role do studies like yours play in that decision-making process, would you say?
Our project was initiated by the ministry to get information on this topic.
Mm,
Mental maturity of young horses and how this can be assessed.
mhm,
And that will finally go into animal welfare regulations in Germany.
mhm,
Of course, such decisions are always political decisions, but some people at the Ministry for Agriculture decided if we have to make political decisions, they should still be science-based.
mhm. Absolutely. It would be nice to look into, because there's also other parts of the industry when we're talking about not just, well, more a lot in racing, but also in competition, the traveling between different sites and yards and stuff. Like for example, when they go to a sales, and when they're on auction, and the responses that they have there as well. That would be really interesting to look into. Maybe a suggestion. I would
Yeah,
love that would be really good to look into. Um, and also the with would you, because you guys didn't there hasn't been enough concrete data in this either, but with not just the physiological responses. So, for example, with what you looked into with heart rate and cortisol levels, and heart rate variability, but also the actual physiological responses like bone densities and hoof
Yeah.
health and other kind of health parameters
Mhm.
and measures.
Mhm.
How much research has gone into that? Because this will all complement each other, right?
That should complement. There's quite some research done on bone development, on the musculoskeletal system, mainly in thoroughbreds, in racehorses, very little in warmbloods.
Mm.
Uh, well, we are looking at also at bone markers, and in these stallions, they are X-rayed at the beginning of the program and half a year later. Uh,
Sorry, that's not really your
It,
area either.
well, in these 40 stallions, we had actually just one that had to be withdrawn temporarily because of a lameness, and the stallion recovered. So we didn't lose for the experiment a single horse.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and now the next step, but that is ongoing research that is looking at the thoroughbreds.
Mm.
And that is a question, is it okay to start pre-training of yearlings and then have them start in races as 2-year-olds?
Well, I
That's
will be a very close follower of this conversation.
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be as well. Yeah, it's a big interest of mine. So, as you said, your conclusion to just to reiterate what you said, providing their needs, so social interactions, forage, and the freedom to move and free
Yeah.
movement as well, not just in exercise. Is there anything else you would, any advice or points you would provide to the average kind of racing yard owner or someone who's involved in racing or thoroughbreds and warm bloods to kind of help their horses through the pre-training process?
Let's say paddock access is important and is at some traditional race yards, training yards is a problem. And well, these paddocks always require a lot of space. And
Mm.
if this is not available in these older institutions, that will be a problem. And if you look at these old thoroughbred training stables, which are sometimes 100 years old, they have these solid walls between horses. So they do not even see a neighbor. They may see a neighbor on the opposite side of the yard or the stable aisle, but they don't have a neighbor to the left or to the right. And there's something that certainly has to be changed. There is the second racing industry, the standardbreds, the trotters, and they give their horses much more opportunity to move. They keep their horses in groups. Maybe they have it slightly easier because in the standardbreds there are quite a few geldings and mares that may be easier to keep in a group compared to older stallions. But
Yeah.
trotters, not only in Germany but even more in the Scandinavian countries, they go out in a group. They go out not just for 1 or 2 hours a day, but let's say for half a day.
Mm. Definitely. That is so interesting. And there has been, so just like with the group housing and the paired housing and the individual housing, there has been some mixed kind of results. Generally speaking, the general consensus is that group housing and paired housing tends to um, better welfare. But again, there is, as you said, and just like in your study as well, that hasn't always been the case. And same with the social interactions as well, like actually being allowed the social interactions and how it affects human interactions as well. Again, mixed responses, but generally speaking, it it enhances kind of human horse relationship. If we're talking about reactivity, um, uh, not closeness, proximity to humans, latency to approach humans, and things like that. It is a complicated one, and especially when it comes to social interactions, because there's so many different factors to consider. But I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your work.
Yeah. What's interesting is how well I nearly forgot it. How much can you help a horse just by early handling? Uh, Not like in some countries, they put the horse on pasture, and then when they are 2 or 3 year old, they catch them. They have hardly seen a human, and then they are broken. It's an ugly word to break a
Yeah,
horse.
yeah.
Uh, well, this is not part of our project to look at this, but I we assume it's you can really help the horse when they get used to humans all the time from foal age on.
Hmm.
And maybe this is an advantage of the way they keep the thoroughbred horses. So they have their foals with the mares led on pasture every morning, led back to the stable in the evening, led back to the pasture the next morning. So they are really handled twice a day.
Hmm.
And they should learn to trust humans. And of course, you should never disappoint them.
Hmm.
uh, they shouldn't have other than good experience with humans, and they're still kept in a group. And the second point is there a genetic background?
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, are their horses genetically better suited to cope with the demands of competition?
Mhm.
And then, if you could test them, if you could look at this, you might identify horses where you expect them to have more problems. And then you know in advance, oh, this is a horse that must be given more time or that needs a careful and experienced rider. Uh, we want to look at this, and which is not part of the big project, but we will also look at genetic differences. We have our horses' stress response well phenotyped
Mhm.
by cortisol and behavior and heart rate. And then it's interesting to look at the genetic differences.
Definitely.
There is an interesting study from Sweden, from Paulina Berglund in Uppsala, and she looked at trotters and temperament and racing success. And those with an easier temperament, so the more relaxed horses, were also the more successful horses. So by looking for the calm and friendly and cooperative horses, you are not looking for the lame duck, but you're looking also for the good racehorse. You select for the good racehorse.
Definitely. And I
So
think it's
genetics certainly will be interesting in the future.
definitely. I think a lot more people are looking into temperament rather than it. I mean, I'm relatively young, but I know that when I've spoken to older people that have been in the industry for longer, they said that a lot more times before people would focus on performance and genetic performance rather than kind of potential genetic temperaments and personality, or when we say genetic, but how they interact with the environment will also affect the expression of those genes too. But I think, as your first point as well, it's so important to consider the early socialization period and juvenile period in horses being the kind of 2 weeks to 2 years, and the amount of developments, physical and mental developments that they go through. And it's a primary sensitive period for social and environmental learning. And it's really a time for us to be working with, well, not working with them, spending time with them and getting to know them and them getting to know us, rather than, as you said, just chucking them in a field and waiting until they're ready,
Yeah,
basically
yeah,
physically ready.
absolutely. Yeah,
Physically
yeah.
ready. But it's common. It's still common.
It's common in some sectors of the equestrian industry. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could sit here for another 3 hours if
Okay. Yeah.
but maybe we can get on a podcast with you um another
Okay.
time. Yes, maybe talking about other areas. Otherwise this will take up the entirety of
Yeah.
the webinars I have planned for the conference. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Yeah.